Well, hello everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to our special super spoiler episode for Onyx Storm.
It's here. We're excited. We are also coming down from the high of seeing Rebecca herself yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
As we've mentioned, we are St. Louis people now, and she just did an event in St. Louis. So we went to that.
There were 1,600 people there.
It was a lot of people, especially for a book event, which is incredible. But yes, lots of people.
Put on by the Novel Neighbor.
Who we love.
Lovely.
They're very fun.
We are thinking about trying to record episodes there, so.
We would love to.
Novel Neighbor, if you're listening, which you're probably not, we're going to hit you up soon.
They might be our fan. We don't know.
We don't know.
We have no clue. We're going to hope.
Yeah, we're going to hope. So, as some of our other bonus episodes, spoiler episodes went, this is going to be less of a segmented episode and more of a let's just chat about it episode.
I have not really got to chat about it because Orja you've mostly finished it at this point.
I'm like 40 pages till the end, I think.
Yes, very close to finishing it, so I've just been somewhat keeping my thoughts inside.
Yeah. I did have Colleen spoil it for me because I didn't want to miss anything, but then Rebecca was wonderfully sweet enough to not spoil anything anyways.
Which I appreciate from a reader's standpoint, sad about from someone who had finished the book.
Yes.
Because I would like to hear her direct thoughts about this, but we did get a lot directly.
We did.
From her that I wasn't expecting, but I think it gives me, we were talking about this earlier, a better perspective of where I think the book is going to go, which I like. So.
Yeah. I would say that, but again, I haven't actually finished it yet, so maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't have any strict plans, but I think a lot of people have a lot more wild theories about what if it's this big thing? I don't think that's how she's writing these books or the direction that she's going with them, if that makes sense. She's not, from what I can tell, a lot of her steps forward seem like they're very practical isn't the right word, but maybe realistic.
Logical.
Yes, yeah. She has a lot of logic to the way that she does things, and I think it is because she talked about her writing style and stuff, which we can get into.
We can get into
more. We can do it now or in a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah.
So.
All right, well, let's go. I think let's start with...
Let's start with the book.
The book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Overall review of the book and how does it rank of the three books in your favorite from 1 being the best, 3 being your least favorite?
Oh, it's my favorite by far. It is hard to beat Fourth Wing, but I think I like the way that the characters are shown a lot more. I'm a big character person. If you've listened to literally anything in our podcast, I love character and character development, and I think they all really come into themselves a lot more in this book. I think she was a lot more grounded in the characters, maybe, and had a really good sense of who the characters themselves seem to have a good sense of who they were. I think the other two books were them trying to get here, and I think they're there. Outside of Xaden.
Yes.
Everyone else was pretty chill outside of Xaden. Bless his heart.
Yes. I'm going to agree with you. This is actually my favorite of the 3. Fourth Wing, it's that... We talked a lot about Harry Potter in our last episode, so we're going to keep it to a minimum. But it is that same... the first time I read the first Harry Potter book was the same feeling I got the first time I read Fourth Wing, actually. I was like, oh my god, this is the best thing I've read in a long time. And... this third book, just like you were saying, very much feels like she has gotten to know her characters. They've gotten to know themselves and their dynamics. She spends a lot more time on the dynamics between the characters in this book. And it was even something she touched upon herself last night, where she's like, now we're here. I have my feet firmly on the ground. I know everything about this world and the characters. So she was basically saying the same thing where she's like, she's very much more grounded, and so she was able to concentrate a little bit more on the squad dynamics, and we get to see more perspectives, which I love. It kind of feels like, go along with me here, if you've seen The Office, the American version, the first season really was, they were just trying to do kind of an equivalent of the British show. The second season, they started to kind of build the characters and the relationships a little bit. And the third season was perfect, basically.
I have not seen The Office, so.
Love that show.
I wish I liked it more. The closest comparison I will make is I think that's similar to, which is a similar show, is like Parks and Rec.
Yes.
I think it definitely was, again, like
Yes.
an Office copy. Similar, not copy, but different setting, similar style. I think that's fair to say.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then they definitely came more. I think was the third season when they introduced
Ben
and Chris.
Yes.
I think so, third or fourth season around in there. But like once those characters really got there, I think it grew into its own, which I think is similar to like what you're saying.
Yeah, like I think it takes time to really. It's that. What is it that they say about, like, even about albums? It's like the first one is absolutely incredible. The creative forces that went behind it is like absolutely incredible, but it's very new. And then the second one, it was, I mean, it's hard to follow up a first bestseller.
Yeah.
Rebecca, you did an outstanding job. Iron Flame really just blew everything out of the water again. But this one felt solid in a way that the other two were like, you're still kind of figuring out everything.
I think, which was why I think people like this, and I think, so I'm going to get into some maybe not controversial things, but potentially these books are contentious for different reasons. Anything that's popular is.
Yes.
But particularly I think Iron Flame was. But I think the thing that's different about Onyx Storm that I think people like and that feels settled is Xaden and Violet. So that's what everyone struggled with in the second one, and really even the first one was, which I think they've had to go through those things to get to where they are.
I agree.
But I do think, I will state, my first read of Iron Flame, I had very different feelings about it than my second read through. I have learned recently, I've read them, I read books really fast, I listen to them really fast, and then I have to go back and read them slower, but I want to know the plot so badly that I will plow through it, and then I go back and listen to it for more detail.
Yes.
I did that with Onyx Storm, actually. But with the issues that a lot of people had with Iron Flame was the constant back and forth of Xaden and Violet being like, you talk to me, no, you talk to me, and the secrets and all of the stuff that they were hiding.
Yes.
And then we kind of get some resolution of that with the intrinsic reveal at the end of Iron Flame. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, that's finally, like, the last piece for Xaden.
Yes.
Because, like, he told no one.
Yeah,
like,
nobody knows.
Nobody knows. The only person that knows is Sagail. Like, Taryn did not even know. Like, so I think that's so hard to let go of. I can only imagine that, like, trust that he had. But I guess at that point, he's like, I'm an intrinsic, also a Venom. It's fine. He really, like, settled into that. And I think their relationship being so solid kind of allowed the unstableness, because the world is way more unstable now than it is in the rest of the books, but I think you feel more stable because their relationship is so stable.
I agree. Just they have they really do find home in each other despite everything, and you can really feel that, which is nice. Yeah,
I like something that she talked about, like that I have seen Rebecca talk about before. So this is her first fantasy series. She writes a lot of romance, and she writes a lot of contemporary romance. And she wrote one before this one called Variation that I read and I loved. It was actually very, very good. And reading her contemporary romance and knowing how she wrote that one and knowing what she ended up doing in this one makes a lot of sense, because she talks about, like, real world, I think, relationships a lot. Yeah. And, like, seeing the way that she grounds those relationships is very similar in a lot of her books, which I think is why people like her contemporary romances. So, like, I will state, if you liked the romance in this and you like their relationship, I do recommend at least Variation, in terms of, because it's very similar, just set in a real world without dragons. If you're only reading it for the dragons, maybe less so. But I really liked. It's very similar, like her style, that translated in both, that I really liked.
I do love her writing, and I was explaining it to my mom earlier this morning, because she was like, maybe I should read Fourth Wing, and I was like, listen, it's not a fluffy book. She was like, is there good English in it? And she's talking about, like, like a classic or, like, literature or whatever. Yes. And I was like, I would not say that it is literature. However, the writing style of this book, like literature, like highbrow, like... Yes. But the style that she writes, the way that she writes in this book is so good. It's like contemporary literature.
I think that's the thing that I personally like. Well, so when people talk about literature, right, which I know you know this, you're the English lit person, we talk about literature from like a historical perspective.
Yes, we do.
That was how those people spoke in that time frame. So it was probably, not completely, but like educated people spoke more that way. Like Jane Austen. Jane Austen is, Lord knows, I love Jane Austen. Love her. But she's held up as this like paradigm of like gorgeous, lovely writing, and she was. Mm-hmm. But at the time, it was just normal writing. That was how people
I'll do you one more. In fact, novel writing was considered lowbrow.
Yeah, just in general.
Just like Shakespeare. Shakespeare,
yes.
not highbrow.
No, not at all.
At all.
No, which is so interesting. Yeah, and which I think they should be held up as those things now. I love reading classic literature. I read a lot of it in college and in high school. Some of it was some of it was not. Mm-hmm. I like reading. I like books that feel real to me. And those books don't feel real to me. They feel almost more like fantasy than this fantasy novel.
I can see that.
Yeah, to me.
Because the way that they're communicating feels like it's in a different world.
I would have a harder time fitting in those books if I was thrown into them than if I was thrown into this one.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I studied literature. I love the classics. Mm-hmm. I love that they were looked down upon, in fact, mm-hmm. in their contemporary time. It's part of the reason I love it so much. Mm-hmm. I specifically do not want to read something that feels real to me.
That's fair.
So for me, it's less the way that they communicate. Like, this doesn't feel grounded in reality to me because there's dragons.
That's fair.
What I mean? Like, I feel like I would fit in a little bit better in Jane Austen's era, except for the fact that I'm brown. I'm aware. Don't worry. But, like, personality-wise, I think I would fit in one of those books much better than I would in this book.
It's fair.
So.
That is fair. I think they would kick me out for having a big mouth. Yes.
The same but opposite.
I think the relationships, which is, again, what I look for in books. I love relationships. I love people interacting. There's a reason I did the major that I did. And that there's a lot of that in like Jane Austen type novels. Mm-hmm. It is not social interactions that I have done a lot of study on, and they're very different.
They are very different.
I've done a lot more modern study. Sociology is about modern times. Mm-hmm. There is historical study with it, and I'm not saying there's not, but I think to me the more interesting parts is how it's shaped modern life. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I know the dragons aren't real, but I think in my brain that feels more real to me than stuffy people drinking tea in parlors. They
feel very real.
I forget that they're dragons in the way that they're written. Mm-hmm. I think they're people.
Yeah, see, my mind knows firmly that they're dragons, but they do feel real. Let's talk a little bit more. Let's get back into the book a little bit. Yes. It's a good segue. So this is the book. This is the book that we learn more about dragons. Mm-hmm. We get to know more about the dynamics between dragons. We get to know so much more about their civilization. And we get to, spoilers, this is a spoiler episode.
Yeah.
We find the Irids.
We do find the Irids.
And we get to know about dragon society from their perspective too, which is wild.
They are interesting.
Yes.
I don't like them.
I have a lot of thoughts.
I don't like them. I don't dislike them. I understand them, but I don't like them.
They feel very similar to Hedatis I hate that Isle. I'll say it. They suck.
They do suck.
But in that, like, austere, emotionless approach to...
Yes.
They claim that they're pacifists. They claim that they want peace and whatever. But they deem all of Andarna's choices as unwise and as proof that she isn't worth... Like, she shouldn't be allowed into their society. Which, like, if you are truly a peace-welcoming person, in my mind, you would want to fight for that peace. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
The thing about that whole that interaction, so if we're going to get into the Andarna and Irid interaction,
yes,
that I was just kind of confused by, I guess, was they left her.
They sure did.
They left her in a society where she would be born without knowledge of the Irids. Like, I think it's pretty well known that, like, babies, yes, may be born peaceful creatures. If you've been around any sort of small child, they smack you. They hit you. That is just the nature of of humans. I'm going to say that I think similar traits are put on dragons. You teach them to be peaceful. You teach them, no, that's not fair. That's not how you do that. They left her in the society that they hated to be raised by those in that society, and are now expecting her to follow their beliefs that she was never taught.
Correct.
I think that's the injustice element of it.
It's very unjust. And then also, like, I understand that dragons consider themselves better than humans, which I would tend to agree.
Yeah, they are.
But judging Violet so harshly, too, like, this is also a 20-year-old who was thrust into a world that she would, first of all, again, knew nothing about, and was forced to learn, and she had to evolve into what she became. Otherwise, she would have been dead.
Correct.
So, like, yeah.
I think which is why I think the Andarna line is so good, where she was like, you speak about peace when you've only known it, is really impactful. I think I, like, physically, I have notes, I should look at them. I think I wrote that one down. That was, like, I think that was the first note that I actually took of the book, that, and how much I love Riddick, but we can get into that later. But I was like, oh, wow, that's one incredible line, Rebecca. I don't think that you are getting as much credit for that one. I think people are distracted by some other things, but it's a very impactful line in terms of, like, what, even in modern times, of, like, people, and I understand being a pacifist. I'm not saying that that's a bad route to take.
Yes, agreed.
But at the same time,
not something that I could probably do.
I am not a passive person. There is not a single bone in my body that is passive. I wish it was. It is not. Some people are, and I think some people are more inclined to that, and I think that's great. But I do think sometimes when you're interacting with people that are that way, they have this, like, kind of superiority complex about it, where you're just like, I think Americans can sometimes do that as a general rule. You're like, you preach peace even though you've only ever, like, relatively peaceful times for us. In situations where, like, that's not an option for them.
Yes. No, I agree. So Rebecca was talking a lot about her writing process, which was so amazing, because I think we've mentioned it on this podcast. I am attempting very poorly to write a book. By very poorly, I mean I have it plotted out almost entirely. I just have to sit down and write the damn thing.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily poorly. I think that just means you just have to write the book. You have a plot.
I have a whole plot,
which Rebecca also starts with.
Yes.
So
it was very cool to hear her talk about her writing process, and the advice that she was giving was so amazing. But part of what she was saying, there was a question that the audience asked, which was, like, about how she chose to include all of the representation and all of that. And I think that her answer kind of ties into this a little bit as well, where she said that she just wanted to try to represent the people that are in her space that she's aware of, and work on expanding that to people that she's not aware of as well. But she made that point in the book because it is a privilege, especially in our world, especially in this world as well, in Onyx Storm's Fourth Wing's world, to know peace. It's a privilege, and you should know that you're privileged. Like, you can enjoy the privilege.
Yeah, you're allowed to.
It's privilege.
You can't help that.
You can enjoy it. But you should know, and you should know that there are people out there who are not privileged enough to experience what you're experiencing.
Great.
And maybe not judge people so harshly because they come from a world of chaos and violence.
Correct. Don't judge them, and don't judge them unworthy of help.
Yeah.
I think that was the thing that was so heartbreaking for me, was that, like, I don't even know if the Irids necessarily have all the answers, but they might have had some, to the point that they just deemed them unworthy of any help. And I understand that can be difficult, like, especially if you're on one side of a conflict and you're seeing people on another side, and they're, you know, seemingly in your eyes the aggressors. It's hard to extend that same grace. I'm going to use the word grace, but the same grace to them. That is maybe one of the harder things to do. I don't think that's necessarily what's happening in the Irids case, so I think maybe we should specify that that is different.
Yeah.
But
you know what it reminds me of?
What?
It reminds me of Wakanda.
Yeah.
In the whole plot of the first Black Panther movie, where the newer generation is like, we do kind of have a responsibility to help. Opening our borders might be disastrous to us. And so, okay, we won't open our borders, but we can still provide resources and help to the outside world. Yeah. And maybe we should.
Yeah, I agree.
Side note, Michael B. Jordan, I forget the name of the quote-unquote villain in that movie.
Killmonger?
Yeah, but I mostly agreed with him.
I think that was the point. I think that was the concept of what he was supposed to be, like, an extreme version of, being like, you have the resources to help, you should help, it's a whole concept, but yeah. Yes.
So yeah, the Irids are basically Wakanda.
Correct.
Yes. All right.
Yes.
What else do you want to talk about?
Oh, well, I had a prediction, actually, at the beginning of this that I wrote down.
Okay,
so I tried taking some notes through here. My first one was in Chapter 2, Violet says, "Do you love me?" as proof that Xaden still loves him. I predict at the end that he says he doesn't love her. So he didn't do that, but I wasn't fully wrong about it. So I could clearly tell in the beginning that, because, like, Rebecca sets up a lot of things really early in her novels, and I was trying to figure out what she was setting up. Upon second reread, I'm seeing it more. But the whole point was, like, Violet was like, I know you were still you because you still love me. I do think at some point that will happen. It does not happen in this book. It's actually the only thing that saves him from going full venom is his love for Violet. That's pretty much the only thing he has left.
Very admirable.
But I think at some point, because of the nature of Xaden, one, when he loses it, I think it's going to be that. But two, I actually expected him to still love her. But in the end, because of his like self-sacrificing nature, to be like, to shut it off and be like, I don't love you, and Violet being like, I don't believe you, and him being like,
well, I don't
love you. That was kind of more what I was predicting at the time. Yeah. So I wasn't fully wrong. It was related to his venom transition, but it wasn't in the way that I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that a lot. I also love, is it time to get into this? The fated mates discussion. From last night, Rebecca admits, as we all do, she loves reading a fated mates story. Hates writing it.
So there was two different authors, and I wish I could remember the name. I think her name was Lexi. I cannot remember her last name. There was two authors on stage, and the other author was like, I also don't like
writing
it, which is so fascinating to me, because I would not have thought that. Again, I'm not an author. I wrote some fan fiction, dabbled in that. Not the same thing as like writing a full novel. But
the reasoning was that, or Rebecca's reasoning at least, was when I'm writing, it's my world, my characters. I want to be able to control, and I want consent. I want you to choose to love me an earth-shattering amount rather than it being fate.
Which is a big argument that people have with fated mates.
Yes.
I don't disagree with fated mates. I think there is an element of, I think even with most fated mates anymore, it is a choice.
Yes, I agree. I do love fated mates, but I like the thought. I don't like it when it feels like it's not in their hands. Like, I like it when they are like, I was born for you, fate chose you for me, but like in a I've been looking for you sort of way.
I've been more of like I think of fated mates as more of like a soulmate thing.
Yes.
Personally, more than like a magic thing.
Same.
So I think if it's more magic driven, then I'm like a little bit, I don't know about that. But if it's more of like they view it almost more as a soulmate with magic,
yes,
then it's fine.
I agree.
Because I think that's normal. But
I agree.
Yes, and I think that also takes some of the like consent element back into it.
It does.
A little bit. I would say anymore. Most women. I have not read a lot of male fated mate novels, to be honest. I feel like men don't tend to write fated mate novels, but I could be wrong.
I don't know.
In terms of fantasy, I read almost exclusively women.
Yes.
Which something that she also said that I thought was interesting when she was talking about it, and I think this is similar to that concept of she only likes it in fantasy novels.
Yes.
She does not like it in modern.
Yes.
Which I agree with.
Yeah. She also doesn't like enemies to lovers in modern, which let me put a pin
maybe
in
that's
that.
the one she was saying.
Yeah.
For some reason I thought the fated mates wouldn't. I think she said
it was both.
I feel like it was both. But yes, I agree.
Sorry if we're wrong, Rebecca.
Sorry, Rebecca. But I also feel like that's...
I think she was saying
I think she
that,
said it about both. I think it was both.
So I think I have a prediction.
Okay.
Because there's this part in the book where Taryn is giving Violet shit for her mate. Mm-hmm. And she shouts, "Humans don't mate." And he said, "That's why you're the inferior species," or something like that. Yeah. I think that if the bond is strong enough I think that maybe humans do mate. It's not like in an animalistic way, but I think like it's a soulmate thing. Mm-hmm. I would love to see this. It's okay if I'm wrong. But I think that Xaden and Violet are soulmates in the very sense of the word because of the extra bonds that they share with each other.
Yes, I agree. Well, they have clearly a much deeper connection than most couples are going to have.
I wouldn't say it's a deeper love. Like, everyone very much loves their people as much as Xaden and Violet do, but they're like, it's a deeper connection. The reason they're so obsessed with each other is because they have each other's minds in addition to.
Yes. Which I find romantic. I don't want.
Actually, no. Scratch that. I do want. Joel, if you could just read my mind, that would be great.
I actually don't. Single person over here. But I don't think I would want... Like, I like the ability to communicate without verbal communication. That part is cool. The rest of it, I'm like, I'm good. Like, I don't.
That's fair.
I don't need that. I like the ability to talk without, like...
Yeah.
Although I do love all of the people, like, in this book being like, they're doing that thing where they pretend like no one else is in the room.
Kills me. It's so funny.
But...
They do it a lot in this book. It's so funny.
They do, and it's very funny, because it's in front of... Because it's not a concept that I, like, always think of, because it's not uncommon for... like, people to talk mind to mind in a lot of books, especially fantasy books. But, like, the actual reality of that is two people just standing there
looking at each other.
In dead silence.
Yes.
Just, like, aggressively making faces, and you're like, what are you doing?
And everyone else is, like, trying to have a conversation, trying to talk to them. Mm-hmm. Like, there's moments in this book where people are having conversations with them, and they just stop that and start talking to each other instead, and it's so good.
Correct.
This is, Rebecca, your writing is incredible. It's very grounded in reality.
It is, which I appreciate deeply. Like, this is how I would communicate with people. It's probably because I do have a more aggressive communication style, but...
Shout out. Can we shout out to your brother?
Oh, Caleb, yes. Caleb, we love you.
Caleb, we love you.
My mom said that you should start watching the podcast, and I agree.
I agree, too.
Please, I think he might. Yeah. He likes us.
Tell all your friends.
Yes. I hesitated but yes, tell people that...
He's the one that's in high school still.
He is.
Okay.
Yes, that's why I...
Maybe don't tell all your friends yet.
Tell your 18-plus-year-old friends?
Yes.
That's why I hesitated. Also, I think knowing his friends, I don't know if we're their cup of tea in terms of books, but...
That's okay.
But yes, so do you want to talk about that whole incident? Okay, so if you listen to our podcast, we are friends. We also very clearly have different thought processes about pretty much everything in the way that we approach it, which I do love.
No, it's great.
I love people in my life that have different thoughts and opinions.
It's good to have multiple perspectives.
I seek that out on purpose.
Yes.
I think it's very apparent in my friend group, actually, if you know anything about me. But, so in our episode where we talked about, so this is actually going back to...
Last episode, I think.
2 episodes ago.
2 episodes.
Because it was before steampunk.
That's
right. So, it's going back to A Court of Mist and Fury, where, so I guess technically a spoiler for that, but it's here nor there.
It's fine.
It's up, go watch it. But we are talking about how when Feyre is given the amulet, how, like, you were very much like, I think it's comforting, I think it's great.
I want you to do that to me.
Yes, I'm aware. My moral compass, everything inside of me hates that, because to me, so, interesting, my mom had some other thoughts on that, but to me, that felt dishonest, and if I was Feyre, regardless if you were doing it to help keep me safe, I would be like, that's not fair to me. to do that. And so ethical dilemmas, essentially, is kind of what we were covering. And I don't necessarily think either side is wrong.
No.
Truly, I think it's just different
perspectives.
What you said,
I would agree maybe that ethically, not great. Yeah. Morally is a different story.
Morally, it's fine, yes. Yeah. Ethically, from, like, a strict ethics standpoint,
yes.
Technically, that wasn't ethical. Correct. So Caleb is learning ethics currently in school, and they're going, like, deeper into it. And so I do think this ethics concept is actually really funny. And so he was struggling, trying to figure out where he landed on this concept. So he was talking about how, like, the prompt was, if you have a friend who is chronically late, we both are. We are both this friend. So, if you have a friend who is chronically late, do you tell them, like, 15 minutes ahead of time when they actually need to be there so they'll be there on time, or not, and is that ethical? Mm-hmm. And he was, like, really debating whether or not he thought that was ethical. My mom goes, oh, listen to this. And he listened to our debate about it and then made his choice. He did agree with me. He is also my sibling and raised by my parents.
It's fine.
But I think it just depends on what you put your emphasis of value in.
I think so too. I also think that in that specific situation, mm-hmm. you know your friend. Yeah. Let them be late.
So, like, in terms of I have been the friend that people have done this to me.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily care if I know that's what you're doing.
Right.
Which I know defeats the purpose of it.
Right.
But it's also like, you do it enough that it shames me a little bit enough that I will get there at least closer to what I know is supposed to be on time.
Right.
Then
I would be so I actually was raised in a family that was chronically on time. By chronically on time, mm-hmm. I mean early. On time is late.
Yeah, so was my family. We call it Sanders time. If you're not 10 minutes early, you're late.
It is, in fact, the opposite of Indian Standard Time. Somehow my dad is like, gotta be there early or we're late. And I'm like, sure.
He's like, I'm beating that stereotype.
It kills me when I'm late. My husband is the opposite, chronically late. Like, so he shows up late to everything, and I just want to, like, pinch his stupid head.
Sorry, continue. I have a thought on that.
Okay.
But
and we moved to New Jersey. And we only spent all of our time with each other for like 9 months. And I think he's rubbed off on me a little bit because since coming back to St. Louis, I have been late to every single one of our podcast meetings.
I've also been late.
And it kills me, though. It makes me really anxious and mad.
It doesn't bother me. It's fine. The one I was going to say is it's a St. Louis thing. It is. Everyone in St. Louis, it's a running joke. We're all like 10 to 15 minutes late. It's just the expectation. Like, everyone just kind of understands. I think, like, St. Louis as a whole is the friend that you tell 15 minutes early to be somewhere.
Yeah.
Most of the time, like, most of when I'm getting together, most people in general, like, not even just two individual people, build in like 15 to half an hour.
Yeah.
Buffer.
You know, another layer of this is that although I know that Joel is always late, mm-hmm. I still never lie to him and tell him that we need to be somewhere earlier than we need to be.
It just, to me, and I think that's the thing, so, like, I value honesty.
Yeah.
It has to be presented as honesty, not as
duplicity.
Or, like, judgment of, like, I'm better than you, like, and Lord knows I'm guilty of that. I have a lot of opinions and thoughts, and sometimes I'm not phenomenal at portraying them in a kinder way, working on that. But to me, dishonesty in that way would feel like such a betrayal because I feel like I'm aware that I'm the one that's late, mm-hmm. but instead of being like, hey.
Right, like, hey, you're always late. It's important to be on time for this one thing.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I need. Or just been like, hey, I know you're always late. I truly don't care that much because I don't. Mm-hmm. Most people really don't. But, like, if there is a situation that I have to be, like, I'm usually late just because I don't have to be there on time.
Right.
It's fine. I'm flex. Yes. People are flexible. It's flexible. But if it's like, hey, we are leaving, like, a flight, I'm not late for a flight.
Yes.
Right? Like, if I know that, if you're like, hey, like, we have to be leaving by this time frame, we will be leaving without you if you're not there. Even just wording it that way. Not even being like, hey, you're always late. Just being like, hey, like, this is a strict time zone.
Exactly. That's fine.
That's all, like, to me, that's
all it takes.
All I need.
Yeah.
And if it, like, is truly bugging you, being like, hey, like, I know it, like, I understand to you maybe this isn't a thing, and, like, but it is to me. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's a moral, whatever on you. Just letting you know. You're like, cool.
Yeah,
I'll work on it.
It's fine, exactly.
But just deciding that you get to lie to me about that, to me.
Yeah, no, I don't like that. I do agree with something, especially as petty as being on time.
Yes, so ethically, not great.
But I still, if it's a matter of giving me something, if I don't have the courage to get out of a situation myself, but you know that I can do it, and lying to me to say that, oh, well, this will help you get out, do that, please.
Okay.
That's fine.
I don't know if I can get myself to do that, but I will do my best.
I'm begging you. Please. I'm not strong enough.
I think I will just force you to do it.
Not strong enough, Colleen.
I understand. I get it. I do.
Yeah.
But yes, anywho, our podcast is actually educational.
Yes.
No, we do have silly takes, and that's part of the fun, and yes. I do think that's part of the fun and why we do this.
But it's now been proven that it's educational.
It was used as an example in an educational discussion post.
Look at us.
Look at us being intelligent and talking actually quite a while about ethics.
Yes. There. Good job.
Look at us.
So back to Fourth Wing. I mean, Onyx Storm.
Yes. I really want to talk about Riddick.
Let's talk about Riddick, the star of the show.
He might be my favorite now.
I love him so much.
Like, in terms of, like, book boyfriend. Yes. He's, like, moved.
Skyrocketed.
So something I will state about myself, and I do know this. So I like a broody main character. I think it is kind of apparent that they are actually not my favorite in books most of the time. Mm-hmm. And since I've been a child, the, like, broody, like, main character energy, that's not appealing to me. Mm-hmm. The, like, fun and goofy side character, always my favorite.
# Lucian forever.
Yes, Lucian. Exactly. Or, like, just those kinds of things but they're still responsible. I don't like the irresponsible characters.
Yeah.
Like, Riddick is still very...
He's so responsible.
He's so responsible. He just takes life a little more lightheartedly. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I love his, like, I'm gonna die. I'm doing what I want while I'm alive. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm not here to settle down. I'm not here to, craft this whole life. He's like, I don't know what my life is gonna look like. I almost think it's maybe a defense mechanism a little bit, which I think it is in terms of, like, I don't want to build a life where I might have to leave somebody behind. But he's still making connections.
He is.
Which I love.
His moment in this book where he's, like, joking about wanting to be on Quest Squad and all this stuff. And then he has a moment where he's like, you cannot go without one of us. Yeah. Take me with you. Because every time you go somewhere without one of us, something really awful happens, and I need to be with you.
He's so observant. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing that people miss about these types of, like, character choices or, like, character traits, maybe, is that, like, funny people are very observant. Yeah,
you have to be funny.
That's the whole point. Yes, he's incredibly observant, and, like, even him confronting her in the woods.
Yeah.
After the Irids and being like, why didn't you tell us? Mm-hmm. Because it's been brought up a few times.
Yes.
But, like, the only people that knew were people that were Xaden's people.
Yeah, that he's Venin.
That he's Venin, yes. Like, that's who knew this. And you need people that are we are on your side.
Yeah.
You need people in your court.
Why do you insist on keeping secrets from the people who have risked their lives time and again, who clearly care about you and love you?
Yes.
Like, tell us we're your family.
Yeah. Basically, what she needs.
She does.
With her. And she has her family. But in terms of, like, who's around her directly. Mm-hmm. All the time.
Riddick's best line in this book. Flirting with the third year. Third year is like, I don't sleep with
I don't sleep with
second years. And he just goes, good thing I
screw like a third year.
Yes.
Yes. Rebecca also says that's Riddick's best line.
Yes.
Because that was a question that was asked. Like, what do you think? He has a lot of good lines. I do think that was the one where I was like, at first I was like, oh no, Riddick. And then it worked.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
If it works, it's great.
It's great.
And it did. Like, I was like,
he was like, oh, okay.
I mean, all right.
All right.
I love a confident man.
Me too.
He's incredibly confident, but I do feel like he can not in this apartment, but in general, he backs up his...
Yes.
He's an incredible fighter.
Yeah. Incredible writer.
He
jumped in to study. He's smart.
Incredibly smart.
He's so smart. He's so observant. He's so loyal.
Which is my favorite trait in terms of, like, attractive qualities personally, is loyalty deeply.
Yes.
Which is, I think that it goes along with those honesty things, but, like, loyalty almost to a fault.
Yes.
Is incredibly attractive.
It's incredible. He keeps the mood light for everyone.
Someone needs to.
Somebody really does.
Because everyone else is just so...
They're so serious. And I understand that the world is falling apart. I get it.
But, like, you can't just do that.
Yes.
Like, yes, I like a little bit of a lightheartedness. Like, if I'm too down or something, I have to throw on, like, a goofy comedy or, like, watch something more lighthearted. Like, the world may be falling apart, but I'm gonna laugh.
Exactly.
Because if I don't, I will fall apart.
Yeah, we also discovered that we both might be Riddick.
Yeah.
Like,
I would be the most like Riddick in this book,
I would be the most like Riddick as well.
Yeah.
Like, I'm, like, cracking jokes left and right, not taking anything too seriously, being serious.
Yes.
When I need to be.
Yes.
I will not take a single thing seriously. I'm like, I'm riding a freaking dragon. If I die, I die. It's cool.
Do think our entire repertoire of our podcast is a pretty good... like, this podcast is relatively serious. We're not.
We are not.
Even a little bit.
We are not. I, like, describe our podcast on social media as, like, an in-depth discussion from, like, a degree perspective. I'm basically like, do you like talking about books like you're studying them? Well, join us.
Which we do.
But we make lots of jokes.
But which I think is what makes it... I truly think that's what makes us fun. I think the jokes, which we have not made as many in this one, but I think that's what's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I don't listen to just info book podcast, to be honest. I have to have some fun in there.
Yes, same. English professors. If only I could have written comedy into my essays. That would have been great. It's fine.
It's totally fine. Yeah, I've decided I would date Riddick in this world. And not that he would want to date me.
Oh, he would definitely sleep with you.
He would, but I would want to date him.
Yeah.
That's the issue. I just think he would, he is, the reason that I think he does sleep so much is he is attractive because he's the light.
Yes.
He is the light in the dark world
in the darkness
thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think is more of a rallying person than people give him credit for.
Yeah. He's really, like, the heart and soul of the squad, honestly.
He is. And I love him.
Yay, Riddick.
Love him.
All right, now we should talk about Xaden. The spiraling. The utter loss of control every single time that we see him interact with Violet, he spirals out of control. And it just gets worse and worse, and it makes me so sad.
It was so, which we were told.
Yeah.
When he talked to Jack, he's like, you can't. I do think it's interesting, and I wonder if, I don't know, I have a theory about how they could fix it, but that's a whole other thing, because I wrote a note about it, and we can get to that in a little bit, because I have a theory. I believe something that has to do with it. But Xaden cannot distinguish between the two powers. Sigale can. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming it's because it's her power and someone else's.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting from that Xaden truly cannot tell what is Sigale's power and what is...
Like wielding from the earth.
Yes. Which, it's technically because dragons also wield from the earth. That's the whole concept. That's why they can't wield on the other islands.
Right.
But...
it is very interesting.
Because I assumed he would be able to at least feel the difference, and I think that's actually why people turn more venom to a degree.
Right. Like, at the beginning, they maybe don't realize that they're doing it.
Eventually, he does. Like, when they're on the island in Deverelli, he made that choice.
He sure did.
Kind of. That seems complicated, because they talk about it not being him. I do think it's him.
I think it was him. I think he was like, we are going to die if I don't do this.
It's him if he wasn't so in control, which is the thing. They're like, well, that's not Xaden. I think it is. It was still, like, he still had his emotions. They were heightened. Mm-hmm. He was still much more in control at that point.
It was very, I will do anything to keep you alive,
yes.
Xaden, which is very Xaden.
It is very Xaden.
So, I love him so much in Fourth Wing. Like him a little less in Iron Flame because of, like, the inability to communicate, but I still love him. This book, I was just like, I could tell from the first moment that he was already gone. Mm-hmm. I know I was texting Colleen my reactions for everything, and I was like, Xaden turning is heartbreaking, and I'm still holding out hope because we're only in the third book.
Yeah.
And I like for things to end happy. And if it doesn't, Rebecca, that is okay.
Yeah, we're not expecting it
We're not expecting it to, but I'm going to remain optimistic. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell from the first moment you see him in this book that he is no longer... He has no control over himself anymore.
No.
At all.
No. The moment he... I don't know. He made a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he had another choice to make or not, but he made a choice, if that makes sense. I think he knew when he made that choice. I think making that choice broke him. I don't actually think turning Venin is really what broke him. I think making the choice to betray basically his moral...
Yes.
what he's been fighting against. His father died for.
Yes. And Sigale.
And what every I can't imagine, which we don't get a whole lot of, which is okay because it's Violet's book, but I can't imagine turning into the thing that everyone in your life has died for.
Yes.
And you having to save them from it, but you turning into it and knowing that you're adding to it.
Yeah. And then Lynx, I don't know how it ends, but Lynx manifests shadows. He is magic's need for balance, the answer to that balance. Lynx wields shadows. Yeah. His signet is shadows. And then I cannot believe that Violet, she's bordering on delusional at this point. I am a reader, so I believe that it could still happen. But her being like, he's still Xaden, he's fine. I cannot believe that even after Lynx manifests shadows, she's like, it's fine. You're going to be fine. We have years together. It's like, honey, no. He's very quickly spiraling downwards. You have, like, weeks together.
Yes.
Like, you could still believe there's a hope afterwards, but you're not holding on to him for,
No. She was delusional. I think she also knew she was delusional, but I think the only way that she could move forward was to be delusional.
I agree.
I think she couldn't accept it. And I think she said that. She's like, I can't accept that.
Yeah.
And I think someone needed to be that for him because he wasn't.
He was
And
not.
I don't really even think anyone else besides her was that for them.
No, not a single one.
Like, I think she was like, everyone else is going to give up. I am not.
Everyone else would have given up if she wasn't like, hey, we cannot give up.
Yes.
Like, even Bodhi and Garrick and Imogen were like...
Which one of them did?
I know one of them.
But we don't know which one.
Yeah.
We know one of them did.
Yes.
Technically, it says new brother. There's also this concept where he says that he's supposed to be dead. So there's a theory that it might be Liam.
No.
I know. It's someone who was supposed to be dead. I also am curious if it's his dad.
Oh, that would make a lot of sense.
I don't know. That's why I was trying to reread the end of it again yesterday because he said it was someone that had seen me struggle the last 5 months, so it's more than likely. But there was something about like I thought you were dead, but I also thought
I haven't gotten there yet,
but
so I don't know what you're talking about.
It's complicated. I don't know. Like you already know that this is happening. We talked about it.
Yes, we did.
Like. I can't decide if he thought that, like, the sage was dead. There's kind of a little bit, which is the point, I think, a little bit of confusion for me around.
Yes.
Because it's also really the only section we get Xaden's perspective.
Okay.
And it's a Xaden's POV. And so it's just, you can kind of almost even tell in this that he's, like, fighting, the way it's in his brain, the way he's fighting it is almost, like, jumbled. And Rebecca purposely didn't tell us who it was.
Yes.
That was the point of it.
We also, fun fact, when Rebecca writes, she said that she writes, like, very deep POV, which is why it's such good writing, which is why, I mean, I have heard, some of my favorite books are in first-person point of view, but when she says that she goes deep POV, she's saying, like, I'm out on that parapet, I'm seeing the wind, I'm feeling nauseous because it's high up, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I cannot, how do you do, you're magical, that's all.
That is, if I was going to write, that would also be the only way that I would be able to.
That's how I would want to, that is how I do write. Like, I picture it in my mind, but I can't translate it to actually being there.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? As maybe that's something that I can grow into.
Yeah, this is not her first novel by any means.
But her writing from, so I've now read Rhiannon's point of view, which was incredible, getting to know Fierg a little bit more too.
Yeah.
And I'm almost done with Imogen's chapter. I know, spoiler, I know that Quinn dies. I have not gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But she really does switch perspectives in a way that is hard to do.
And it's very them.
Yes.
And it doesn't feel forced or odd.
Not at all.
It is very much still them as a character.
Yes.
Which I love.
Love it. What were you going to say about a theory for the Irids and the Venin? Because I just remembered, because I just read it, that while they're in kind of their, like, they're battling Theophany, and she's, like, about to send the tornado or whatever. Or no, before that. When they're at Eratia, and the dragons are about, or the wyvern are about to come, and then the Irid comes and fires the wardstone. But at that point in time, when they're at the Temple of Dune, her eyes go wide in fear, and she leaves. And I think it's because of the Irid.
Yes, the thing that I was thinking of is not to do with the Irid, but I agree with you.
Okay.
There's just, like, a random tidbit of, like, a thing that she mentions when they're in Deverelli that never comes up again.
Ooh, what?
So she talks about the moths on Deverelli.
Yes.
That they use, and they eat on the honeycomb, and they're, like, bioluminescent or whatever.
Yes.
And that's what they use for lighting. And it was such an interesting, and I don't know if maybe it was a plot device just to show, like, that Violet notices things so she would know it later when they went to the
Isle of Hedatis.
I don't think so. I could be very wrong. She's just, Rebecca's very intentional with the things that she points out.
Yes.
And I was like, that's interesting. Especially because Zayden's like, I love that you're so observant and you're looking at this. Don't have time. And, like, shortly before then, they're like, we're looking for, like, some sort of magical something. Like, a thing they can take, a thing they can do.
Yes.
I don't know. I feel like at some point they're going to come back. They may not. It may just be she likes pretty moths.
They're the way to cure the venom.
Well, something to do with them.
Yes.
I don't know if that's what it is, but, like, she mentioned the moths that were on the island for a reason. Those will come back. Lots of talk from, and then I talked about Taryn's legacy. But yeah, I mentioned the moths. She, like, just mentioned them, and it was such an interesting, like, not about what they were doing thing that I just feel like something's going on with those moths.
I would agree. I think we need to talk about the Irids again, because I just remembered a whole bunch more.
No, we can definitely go back to that. You had just mentioned, I think the Irids are interesting to me. I want to be more interested in them. I think I just don't like them enough to care.
I don't like them. I'm interested in what they can do.
That's fair.
So the Dark Wielders are terrified of them. I think also that Theophany is centuries old, possibly.
She's older. Yes. They definitely don't seem to experience time in the same way.
Because they drain energy from the earth. They're basically energy vampires.
Yes.
Or magic vampires. I don't know. It makes me think that they are the answer to defeating Venom. Obviously, because they said that there's no cure.
Yes.
So I would be interested to see if the moths do come back in a way, because that would be so fun.
I think it would be interesting.
Yes.
I want because they seem, I in my brain, if I was writing something like this, I'm not Rebecca. I'm not saying the way to defeat darkness is gentleness and light. And I think something to do with those moths would be like a gentle, light thing. Because I think most people are thinking it's, this like crazy, I think it's something like oddly simple. I think that would be interesting.
Like, she did mention they're poisonous. What if it's poisonous to humans, but it's a cure for venom? Yeah.
It kills. I mean, in theory, if you're killing everything,
you would kill the venom.
The venom.
The venom.
And the venom.
The venom. venom.
Well, I mean, clearly they're the venom don't like to view it as disease, but they're like...
They are diseased, yes.
They're diseased. It's like bulging. It's making them irrationally...
They're vampires.
Well, their emotions are everywhere. Like, I mean, we see that in Zayden. We see that in Theophany. We see that in all of them.
Oh, it just gave you a thumbs up. That was fun.
Whoops.
It's not going to do it. We've done this before. It's not going to do it again.
We have, yes. That's fine. Anyhow, it's very interesting. But I do think you're correct. I mean, I know they brought up that Andarna killed them with her
fire.
Fire.
She did not manage to do it again.
She did not, but I wonder if it's a certain type of fire that they have.
Yeah.
That's different from... Because they're clearly different from the other...
Very clearly.
Types of dragons.
Another fun Riddick line that just came to mind where they're talking about the Irids and he's like, Irid, do you think that's short for iridescent? And literally everyone is like, yes.
That is the most me thing that I also, gonna be honest, didn't think about it
really?
until he said it. No.
I read the whole thing.
So I'm just listening, and
yes.
and I'm assuming they do it with an I.
They do.
So in my head it was with an E. I actually wrote it down E-R-I-D.
See, that's fair. I read it, and it is the first part of iridescent.
So if I read that, then yes, 100%. But in my head, Riddick is similar to me, where most things are very verbal processing.
Yes.
And if you're... I didn't think about it. It was one of those things when he said it, I was like, oh yeah. But I, wasn't... I don't know how... I know I should care more about them. The moment that they were like, I don't like you, I was like, you are not worth my energy of thinking about you.
That's fair, but they're going to be important, Colleen.
I know, but I don't want them to
but
be. No, they
be.
should be. I just haven't put as much thought. I think it's also because we just don't get a lot of character interactions.
Also, the most heartbreaking part of this book, honestly.
Yeah.
Andarna is gone. She left.
Mm-hmm.
From what I know. I have 40 pages left. She leaves Violet.
She does leave Violet.
Yeah.
That is
yes.
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 This is where yes.
Don't tell me more.
I'm not going to tell you anymore.
She leaves Violet.
Mm-hmm.
And she is well within her rights too.
She is.
But the fact that they are like, this bond really means nothing. You can break it and you can reform it if you feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that made me hate them.
Well, because they don't bond humans.
So much.
Yeah.
I know. And I understand that that's a little bit of me being like, what do you mean? Humans are great. I'm a human. However, just the devastation. Violet's in bed for 4 days because she's like basically catatonic. I'm crying for half an hour at the table while Joel's mom and stepdad are awkwardly avoiding eye contact with me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was rude. I did not enjoy that. Not the parents ignoring me. Andarna leaving.
Andarna leaving.
Yes.
Yes. It's very... my family has adopted, so I think my perspective on this is really maybe different than some other people.
Oh, yeah.
From the perspective, I am not, but a lot of members of my family have been. And I think that's maybe why, to me, dealing with the Irids is so difficult, looking at it from the perspective of those in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if someone in my family tried to go back to, the people, their birthplace or whatever, because this isn't technically her direct, well, we know later that it is her direct line, but we don't really know that at the time. Just trying to go back.
I do know that.
Yes, yeah. But trying to go back and connecting, with that culture and the things that you have, and them seeing my siblings who were not raised in those, siblings and other people in my family, and them just being like, no, you're not one of us. The rage that I felt, and so, I definitely did not blame Andarna for...
Not at all.
The desire to want to go back, and I don't even necessarily think Violet does.
She does not. She's just devastated.
Either, but it's heartbreaking from I think it's heartbreaking from the perspective of Andarna having to make the choice, from an Andarna perspective of her having to make the choice of these are the people that raised me and I love them.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to learn more about
myself,
but it's really not herself, and that's the thing. Learning about what I should have been.
Mm-hmm.
I have to break all contact with them.
Yeah.
And go and live with my new people. And that seemed like a very harsh.
Very harsh.
And heartbreaking thing for her to have to make that choice.
Yes.
Yeah, I really it just, that part for me, I was less sad for Violet and more sad for Andarna.
I have a lot of complicated feelings. I want to know what Andarna has the potential to become, because I do think specifically where magic dragons are involved, she's going to learn about herself and what she can do.
Yes.
Because there's no one in the Vale that could have possibly taught her, because they don't know what she can do.
Correct.
So I'm really excited for her to be able to do that. And she was so sad when they dismissed her the first time, as any of us would be. Mm-hmm. But again, it's that cold, feelingless calculation, where Leonathan, is that his name?
Leothin?
Leothin?
I think it was Leothin is how...
Sorry, guys. I've absolutely dashed through this book, so I don't remember the names that well.
I think it's Leothin. I also don't remember. They're also all Gaelic names.
Yes,
so how we say it, regardless, is going to be incorrect.
Yes, sorry. So when he, like, basically gives her, like, 2 seconds to decide, and it seems like Violet is like, you should go, I would want you to go, and Andarna hasn't quite made the decision, but he cuts off the conversation, and then they leave. I was like, what? Like, what?
Yeah.
Shock. Tears spewing out of my eyes. Everyone in the house ignoring me because they're uncomfortable with my grief.
I knew. So, interestingly, as I was reading this, and I don't know why, and maybe it was just a me thing, that part really, I was upset. I knew you would be way more upset than I was.
Oh, is that the part?
Yes.
Colleen warned me that she didn't cry at a part that she thinks that I was gonna cry at.
Yes, and I knew it was sad, and I don't know, there was something about it to me. I think I was just more distressed for Andarna and what she's going back to, because only one dragon accepted her, right? So she's going back into a really hostile environment. I think I was more trying to calculate for her more than I was really thinking about the implications of her being lost. Once Violet kind of we could get more of Violet's perspective later, I felt sad for her. But I remember sitting there and I was like, man, I know I'm supposed to be really sad at this point in the book, and I just really, and it wasn't the writing, it just for some reason didn't touch me in the same way as
that's fair,
as other things in the book did. Other parts made me absolutely sob. This book makes me sob a decent amount.
This book, I cried a bunch.
But
you want to talk about some fun stuff?
Yes.
Let's talk about the islands.
I love them.
They're so fun.
They're nightmares.
There are nightmares. They're all nightmares. They're so fun, though.
They're very, circus side quest, almost.
Yes.
I don't
very
know
much.
I don't think you've read this. It's kind of similar to me to the, I could be very off base. It's been a bit since I've read these, but the Once Upon a Broken Heart or, Caraval.
I have not.
Books are kind of circus-esque, but, Once Upon a Broken Heart, there's this, kind of normal side, and then you leave and you go into this northern realm basically, and everything's just kind of a little riddly and silly, kind of very fey. The islands feel very fey.
They do,
but they're not fey.
They don't have any magic, in fact.
No. Well, that's also a thing. There is magic, but I think it's different magic. It's not ground or dragon magic, it's god magic.
Yes.
Hence why Violet could channel on the island of Dune. Dune?
Did she channel? Is it revealed that it was her, in fact?
No, but because she is a...
priestess. Rejected.
She was touched. She is not accepted.
Yes.
Could. Oh, because she was touched by the god or whatever, hence why her hair is silver, which that's a whole other thing we can get into at some point. But I think she had... It's a little bit more... When you get towards the end, I think it'll make more sense. So it's never confirmed. But
when they were it definitely wasn't, she was it definitely wasn't me, it was just coincidence. I was I don't think so.
It was definitely not. It was definitely something to do with her connection with that god. I also have some other theories about that we can get into. I think it's interesting. So there is magic, because there was also I don't know if we know why, but they could have talked to their dragons on the island of Luck. We don't really know why.
Could they? I thought it was just because of the Irids. Oh no, with the volcanic rock. Yes, they could. Yes.
Yes, they could talk to... That was the first time a lot of them had talked to their...
Dragons
outside of Violet. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is another thing that we still need to talk about, but that's fine.
I think it's to do with the Irid, but yes.
I think so too.
Uh-huh.
Okay, which of your islands is the favorite?
I liked... this was also Rebecca Yarros' favorite. I think Neverelli was my favorite, only because it felt the least aggressive.
Yes, I agree. Other than the king and his panthers, that was wild.
I also think that if it wasn't for Halden, I think they would have been fine.
They would have been okay.
Halden is
a nightmare,
which we haven't even touched that man. But I don't think he deserves.
No,
doesn't deserve it.
I forgot that you existed.
Truly, I hated him.
Yeah.
But I think that would have went differently.
Much better. I agree. Rebecca said that it's kind of based off of Turks and Caicos, which is
fun. I've not been.
I haven't been either, but that's so fun. I love that.
Yeah.
I did like the island vibes a lot.
Yes.
Like the beachy one with nature sort of.
Very airy
yeah.
place. Yes.
Yeah. I was wondering where, because I was like, this is definitely supposed to be tropical, but it doesn't feel like our tropics. It feels like other tropics.
Yes, not in our hemisphere.
Yes.
I will be honest, I was just picturing the sandals commercials. Because I've not been to the beach a whole lot.
A little bit, same.
I think it's the it's the beds on the beach thing.
Yes.
It was that vibe.
Yes.
Not actually beds on a beach.
Yeah.
But because they had gossamer curtains and
It did feel very resort-esque.
Yes, but cultural.
Yeah.
Cultural, but
yes.
Kind of resort-esque, yes.
Yes.
But that I also have a hard time, we talked about this last night, I have a very hard time visualizing things in places,
too.
So that's part of it.
I've said this multiple times in this episode so far.
Mm-hmm.
Hedatus is my least favorite. Those people are nightmares.
His mother
sucks.
It makes sense from a cultural perspective of clearly what she grew up with.
Yes.
So I understand it, and I understand why, from her perspective, why she is confused that Xaden feels differently.
Yes. However,
She's
her
still...
lying to I
was kind of similar with Violet, rolling with it until we got to the point where we clearly realized that she knew they were coming.
Yeah, chocolate cake. The damn chocolate cake.
Garrick,
come on, my man.
It wasn't Riddick for once.
It
wasn't.
It did feel like a very Riddick move, but it was Garrick.
Which is, that boy loves some chocolate cake.
Yeah. Clearly more than Xaden.
Well, Xaden has some
complicated feelings
about chocolate cake, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I hate them. They're a nightmare. She should have just let them die.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah.
I get why she didn't.
I do too.
But she should have.
Diplomacy and all that. But,
Similar to Andana, we're working on not eating our enemies.
Yes, correct. I was on Andarna's side.
No, 100%. Should have eaten them. Leave the kids alone. Not their fault. But
yeah. But, I understand why she did that. She had to. She wasn't going to hurt the kids. She was just going to let them die. She should have.
Yes, I agree. They were... I liked the element where she talked about not only them being the way, but erasing the history and culture of their island.
Yeah.
And they gentrified their island.
They did.
In pursuit of better things.
Yeah.
Which is wild to do that in your own culture.
Yes.
It wasn't like they went somewhere else and did it in their own culture.
It feels like on a much smaller scale, the you can change history in one generation thing. Mm-hmm. That's what they were trying to do.
100%.
Yeah. It sucks and I hate them. I don't know how many more times I can say it.
I also think they misunderstand the concept of wisdom.
They definitely do.
Wisdom is not...
He was being foolish when he was not telling her when he was going to die, and that is foolish.
That is foolish.
That is not wise.
But I don't really think anyone can be truly wise. I think that's the point of wisdom. I think you can have elements of wisdom and tidbits of things, but I think that's what they were talking about. It's the hardest one to obtain.
Yeah.
Because it is nearly unobtainable.
It is. It's that line where it's the god?
I think it's a goddess. Yes.
Goddess of wisdom likely helps out those who do not pray to her.
Because that's wise.
If you're praying for wisdom, you're not going to get it. You get wisdom through action.
Well, also, wisdom is not those who seek wisdom
seek knowledge, which is different.
Yes.
You can learn. You can be book smart and a total idiot.
To me, I guess wisdom, which this is also a whole religious concept, I will state that there's a lot about religion within Christianity. There's it's a whole thing, so we're not going to touch that. I'm just letting people who are of that persuasion, I understand there's a whole thing about wisdom. We're not going to
continue.
This is from a different point. But the way that wisdom is presented, it's not, to me, wisdom is not a knowledge, like you said, book smart thing. I think wisdom is more of a social thing.
Mm-hmm.
and how you socially navigate through the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're like truly a wise person, like you get wealth, you gain all of these things by knowing how to navigate people.
Yeah.
To me, that's more wisdom. Like the definition of wisdom is how I view it, more than like similar to that's why the scribes don't pray to them.
Right.
It's knowledge,
It's
not
knowledge.
wisdom.
Yeah. I am going to take it one step further with the wisdom is not just social navigation. It's also, it's like perspective. It's being able to hear and recognize other people's perspectives and not be like, no, that's wrong. This is how it is.
Correct.
You know,
which
like,
is part of that social navigation, but like, yes, similar defined. You are correct. Yes.
So, yeah, they suck.
Hence why we're not wise.
They're dumb.
They are.
I hate them.
Awful. No, they are like, I can't imagine being Xaden once seeing his mom, knowing she's not dead, knowing that his mother knew everything.
Yeah.
Never tried to come see him. Never tried to come save him. Never even tried sending him a letter.
No, nothing.
Nothing.
Made him chocolate cake, sent him to bed on his 10th birthday, and then left.
Yeah, also didn't tell him that she was leaving. She's like, well, I couldn't take you. And he's like, that doesn't matter.
Right, like, I was a child.
Like, you could have... And she's like, well, I would have been... And I think him saying, you made the right decision for you was really telling. Because that's correct. She was afraid. She didn't want to be there. I don't really think she... I think she cared for Xaden in terms of, like... She's a mother and she cares for her children kind of thing. But in terms of, like, actually caring for people, I don't think that's something she's, like, almost capable of.
I agree.
Like, I don't think it's something that she was raised with and has any concept of.
I agree.
At all. I also think she had a lot of feelings about their father. And I think that rubbed off on Xaden. Like, her view of Xaden.
I agree.
But
I agree.
I hate that woman.
I guess we should talk about Zehelna. The
Island of Luck?
The Island of Luck.
That one actually might have been my least favorite.
That one just... I have no words.
Yeah. I've never liked the concept of luck personally. It's also not a cultural thing I grew up with, so it's not necessarily something that I have a great deal of interactions with. I know some cultures have a better sense of like luck and what it is. Hate it.
Yeah.
I don't like the concept. Also, my control element of like, I don't like the concept of leaving things up to luck.
Yeah.
Also, that's not luck.
It's not. That wasn't luck. That was you killed someone.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to.
No, it's very Roman.
Yes.
Feeling of like.
Yes.
The judgment, the Colosseum, the people waiting.
Yes.
They're just like, well, that's what the god says to do. And you're like, no.
But no.
Having to thank someone for killing a friend would...
Also, don't shoot him in the heart. Shoot him in the shoulder.
Yeah, like, there was no need to...
It was just an arrow. It didn't say... It wasn't death. It was an arrow.
Like, shoot him in the leg.
Yeah.
Like, that's still detrimental to them.
Yes.
Still painful.
Exactly.
It's not death.
Exactly.
Like, luck is not... I mean, there's some people that I guess that you always talk about, like, oh, you're really lucky that bullet would have been a half an inch closer kind of thing. So I guess I get it. There's some luck in that. But,
yeah.
Like... Yeah, no, Poor Catriona.
I know.
She finally
moves on and she's finding happiness with somebody else.
And, like, settling and she's still Cat. Bless her.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I can't... Ugh.
Yeah.
Gosh. And, like, the Griffin died. Honestly, I was holding it together till the Griffin died. And watching the Griffin try to struggle.
Yeah.
To get to...
That was rough.
To Traeger.
Traeger,
yeah. And then... It, like, not... It's kind of... Well, I mean, it's a parallel to
Liam.
To Liam and Day. Yeah.
Yeah. It's rough.
Poor Meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else do we have to talk about in this book?
I mean, so it's related to the gods element, but Violet.
Yes.
And we've touched on Violet, so I think personally, maybe not, but her learning that she's been touched by...
Yes.
I think
Asher took her to be dedicated. Why?
I think she was sick as a baby, to be honest, and I think they were scared for her and did some things. I also think that he took her to more than one.
Ooh.
So I've seen this other places, but there is an element, which I don't think you've got to yet. I already mentioned the stone dagger thing, so this isn't necessarily, but there's a note that comes with it, and it says, I hope she doesn't meet the other that curries her favor. I think he also dedicated her to Malik.
That would make a lot of sense.
Which I also think is why she sees Liam.
Yes.
Because clearly, like, I truly think Liam is dead. I think some of it was happening inside of her head, and I think Rebecca has also said that. But I think there's also an element of, like, her...
Yeah, don't bring Liam back as Venom. Don't want it. Let him stay dead. Okay, continue.
I do think Liam is dead.
I do think so, too.
I think he is dead.
I have made peace with it. It's okay.
Yes.
Let him rest in peace. Anyways, continue.
Which we can get back to that. There was a really interesting quote that Rebecca said about Liam that we can get back to in characters that have passed. But I think she was also touched by Malik. Some people think that she was touched by all of them.
Interesting.
But I don't think so, because the only island that we went to that she felt like she had, like, that she was able to wield at or whatever was Umbriel, which is there's not an island that we know of that they went to for Malik.
That's true.
So I think, but she talked about, like, she went to go talk to Malik a lot more. And she talks about Malik constantly, which, again, she's surrounded by death.
Yes.
But Malik to her seems to be the god that she is the most aware and connected to.
Yeah, she has a lot to say to him.
She does. But I don't think Malik cares.
No, I don't think so.
Malik is a god of death. He understands.
Yeah.
And an element of that. I don't think he's as
pompous.
Pompous isn't maybe the right word, but, like, what is the term of, like, untouchable? Maybe he's I think in his mind he's kind of like Simone said, I'm so powerful, I'm death.
Yes.
What are you gonna do to me?
Yeah.
Like,
I agree with that.
I mean, they're clearly kind of similar to, like, the Greek gods. He's Hades.
He is Hades.
Right. Like, Dune is clearly Ares. That kind of hot-headed element of it a little bit that seems to be present.
It does feel very, I think they even call them a pantheon.
Yes, yeah.
So.
And they have different ones, and so I think she was also, but I think there's not, like, a physical marker, or if there is, we don't know what it is yet.
Yeah. Maybe her eyes. They talk about her eyes being, like, unique a couple of times in this book. They're just hazel.
Which is her dad's eyes.
Yes.
So
maybe.
That's also a thing. I have a theory that her dad chose to pass. And that's a little bit why I think maybe it has something to do with Malik. And that was the choice he had to make for her to be touched, because she said, you left too soon. I don't think they're ready. So Lilith writes one of those little excerpts, and it could just be a grieving woman for her husband.
It could be, but you're right.
There was an element of it about her dad passing that seems so, like, he prepared 1.5 years before he did it that he was going to die.
He knew that he knew when he would go.
Yeah, I don't think it was a heart problem.
Yeah.
I think there was something. There was a timeline that he knew. I think that's why Lilith put her in the like, there was a plan.
Yes.
I don't know what the plan was.
Well, maybe we'll finally know at some point.
Yeah, I think it was something to do with Malik, personally.
Yes, I agree. Okay, a couple of things Rebecca said about Liam, but also they did ask about orange dragons.
Oh, I actually loved her perspective on this.
Loved her perspective. She said, go ahead.
Oh, so she talked about this. So, but everyone's like, oh my gosh, all of these orange dragons are like, they're all evil, da da da. And she was like, no.
She goes, do you think Imogen's evil?
Yeah, which I don't think I realized that Imogen had an orange dragon.
I had not either.
But which, again, you get more perspective of her and her dragon. And she's like, no, it's the ADHD of dragons.
Yeah.
Like, they are, like, kind of the counterbalance.
Yes.
They're like so Brennan and Imogen are both so rigid. She talked about this, that they needed someone.
Spontaneity.
They needed some spontaneity, or they also pick people that are very
spontaneous.
There we go. So it kind of depends on the dragon.
Yes. Or they choose a human that matches their energy.
Yes.
Which would explain Solus and Varish. Like, Solus was already the worst, as we know, because Taryn already tried to kill him.
Yes.
And he chose Varish. Varish is the worst.
Yeah, so they are a little bit more, but like all dragons, I think they choose like them. But I think she was saying that, like, the orange dragon is the most likely to be, like, the extreme of that.
Yes.
The extreme, like, if they're bad, they're extremely bad.
Yes.
Kind of element. They're very extreme.
Yes. So I don't think that we can expect Brennan to be sus. The question posed to her was, is Brennan sus? And she didn't really answer it, but she also kind of was like, I don't think so.
I don't think she's planning on it.
I
am learning. I will say truly my perspective on these books changed significantly after listening to her talk about them.
Yes.
And how she writes things. Like, I think
it was incredible.
Rebecca is so much more grounded and practical.
Yes.
Than I think a lot of people think of her in her writing.
Yes.
Which her writing is very grounded, but
it is so grounded.
But like, and I don't know if I thought of that as much until she talked about it. But she's like, no, we are doing this because of this. Like, there's a very let me pause. There was a thought, and it like flew away. Oh, like the way she talks about Dane and the way she talks about Brennan, both are very similar in that they are grounded, they are normal, they are doing their best.
They're doing their best.
She was like, I love Brennan. I also love Brennan. I know a lot of people like to hate on Brennan. I think he made some dumb choices. I also think, and it's probably because I'm an eldest sibling. Mm-hmm. If I was
gonna say,
if I was in a setting where I realized I watched my person, we don't know if it's romantic or not, whoever it is, his person die saving my life, and they made that sacrifice, and I'm realizing that everything that my family taught me was wrong, but I am fully aware that I don't have the resources to take care of my other siblings at this point. Mm-hmm. I would also just go away. Yeah. And find a way to deal with it until I could.
That's it. So I am, as we've discussed multiple times, I am a youngest sibling. Yeah. And I think Violet would have chosen to do the same thing in a different way. Yes. And the thing is that you're at this point where you're the oldest child. There is no example in front of you. No. No one has taught you or prepared you for anything that you're facing. No. And then the world rips open at its seams, and you're like, oh, this is the world I'm living in. I need to figure out how to do this on my own.
Well, I think in his mind, which is what I would be thinking, I would be endangering. They are safe. Yes. Behind those words. Like, their parents made dumb choices. They clearly were only focusing on Violet most of raising them. Don't know why. I think there's a reason. We don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. But clearly there's something there. And he's like, I cannot handle this. I'm going to be outside of these wards. I'm going to be like, you don't want babies running around Basgiath. You don't want babies running around post-war Eurasia.
You really don't.
Eurasia.
No. Eurasia, like, yeah.
That's not... which they're not babies, but they're...
I mean, Violet was very young, though.
Yeah, I mean, she was, like, a teenager. Yeah. Mira was already, I think she was already a cadet. Like, she was... Yes. She was there. I will state all of that. She was very valid for punching him when she saw him. She was. I don't disagree with Mira's action of just absolutely...
Not at all.
I did think Violet forgave him significantly faster than she should have.
Possibly, but youngest sibling.
Yeah, fair. See,
we have a lot of love to give. We forgive people because we're the youngest, and we have a different perspective on everything.
And that's great. Yeah. I think that was phenomenal, but I also understand Mira's rage.
No, I also do too. I get it, but I would have reacted more similarly to Violet, I think. And you clearly would have reacted similarly to Mira.
I don't think I would have punched him, but I think there would have been a less than nice conversation about his actions.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah. That was her line about...
Oh, about the dragons and... Was there anything else about the orange dragons? I don't think so. It was a shorter tidbit, but I thought it was interesting.
She did mention that she did not expect people to hate on Dane as much as we did in the first book.
Funny to me.
I was like, Rebecca, did you read what you wrote him as in the first book? I think that knowing what we do now and knowing who she is as a writer a little bit better after hearing her speak about it, I don't think... We're in Violet's point of view, and Dane knew it. Like, Dane was on top of everything in Violet's point of view. But Dane is also only 1 year older than her and is also working within a system that he has no idea about. Yes. And we've talked about this in our Fourth Wing season. He was terrified for her. Truly terrified. Yes. Truly, like, unbearably terrified.
Which I think is fair.
I do too. And so, like, seeing the perspective and hearing her talk about it, where she was like, he's like 21. He's 22. He's 22 years old. He didn't know that he was...
No.
He didn't know how to react in that situation.
He sees his very... I think she said this. I don't think it was in ours, but I've seen her in other interviews. Like he's looking at his chronically ill friend.
Yeah.
Who was thrown into something that he is struggling navigating, and he does not have the same issues that she has. And he's like, they're gonna kill you.
Yeah, like, you need to get out of here.
Like, I am saving your life.
Yes.
And she's like, stop telling me what to do. And he's like...
I don't care. You...
There is an element where I kind of understand him being like, you are not thinking logically.
Yes.
I am going to think for you.
It goes back to the Tamlin of it all, where we've realized that you get a beautifully handwritten note from your fiance who couldn't write 5 months ago that she's safe and fine and left of her own free will. Are you really taking that at face value?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't.
No.
Yeah, someone else pointed that out to me, and the moment it clicked in my brain, I'm like, oh. Like, you know what? Tamlin might be right.
Oh. Yeah.
I don't think he made the right choices in how he went about it.
Yeah, and same with Dane. Don't think he made the right choices on how he went about it.
No.
But I can see his perspective
His
now.
motivations made sense.
Yeah.
I also do understand, and this is something that Rebecca brings up a lot, he trusted his dad.
He did.
He trusted the people in his life that raised him. So did Violet. So did everyone else.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we see more of how awful Atos is. I don't think he was there with his kids or with any of them eventually. I think the more they got away from what Atos viewed as, like, correct, the worse he got. I think that's not uncommon for people who break away from, like, not great relationships with their family.
I think so, too. They also say that someone, I think it's like Brennan, who's like, I don't understand how you grew up the way you did with a dad like that.
Yeah.
And Dane is like, well, I had your parents too.
Yeah.
So,
which is sad. Dane was doing his best to be accepted by his family in a system that he did grow up in.
He did.
And he was like, this is what's expected.
Yeah.
Like, that's hard to break out of.
It is. It's very difficult.
I do think stealing memories.
Not great.
Not great.
Not great, Dane.
I think if that part would have been taken away, I think I would have forgiven Dane a lot more. I think the invasion of privacy element of that is so violating.
It is extremely violating, even knowing that he trusts his dad, he's following orders, he doesn't know the truth of what's going on, but this is your best friend. Like, talk to her before you do. You owe it to her to talk to her, or try to. Do everything in your power to talk to her before you just steal her memories and tell your dad.
I agree.
Yes. So, Dane, that wasn't your finest moment.
I also think there's more going on with Dane, but you haven't got there yet.
I have Sloane siphons from him, and she says, there is no way that someone like you should have this much power. And that's, I mean, I don't know if it's mentioned again, but that's it.
It's not. And I don't think he's Venom. I don't think he's the person that turns. I don't think he would, to be honest.
No,
I don't think that's in his character, too.
Agreed.
What is that?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Like, it was such an odd... I can't decide... I don't know if it's just because Sloane hates him, kind of. She's into him.
Love, hate. Hate, love.
Yes. I don't know if it's because she's just like, why would a mind person have this much? I don't think
it is that, though.
I think there's something, but I don't know, unless, which it could be, and it would not surprise me knowing the Atoses. I wonder if Kath at some point had bonded someone further back in his family. And that's...
But then he would have to have a second signet or go mad. So...
We don't know what
this brings us back to maybe second signet?
I'm thinking something closer to second signet, or Sloane is just like, how are you this powerful? I hate you. It could also just be that.
It could be, but I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either, especially because, yes, okay, so, the siphoning marks. Why don't they have them? So, Brennan, nor Dane have siphoning marks. So, Dane has a handprint on his body of, like, I think the last time that Sloane siphoned. I don't know if it's Sloane has better control of her signet, which it could be, because she trained, or maybe Dane is like a shield, or something along those lines, which would be a second signet that, like, he may or may not necessarily be aware of, similar to Mira's, because he clearly has a shielding.
That's right, something shields him. Because is it a rune? Are runes the answer to everything?
Well, so there was something about a rune mark, right? Or something that she mentioned.
Brennan has a rune mark on his hand.
Brennan
has a rune mark on his hand.
And I think Dane's is on his neck. Right? There was something... Or, like, one's on a hand and one's on a neck. I don't know which one is which.
I think Dane's might be on his neck.
Mm-hmm. And so we don't know what that rune mark is. We don't know why they have it. They've not really brought it up.
Rebecca refused to talk about it.
Well, because she didn't want spoilers. But, yeah. I find it, like, it was, again, another one of those, like, seemingly throwaway things that clearly is not throwaway.
Yeah.
Like, there was something, because, like, she took the time, Violet's in the middle of a battle, to be like, that's weird.
Yes. Yeah, and she notices that there's no siphoning marks.
Yes.
I love it.
So there's definitely something there.
Whatever it is.
I'm intrigued.
I do think that we should probably... Yeah, it's already 3:22.
Wrap it up. Oh, good.
So we should probably wrap it up. We did start late because
Oh, true. I also don't know if I have much more.
Okay.
So.
Last thing.
Yes.
I don't know what ends up happening to Broccoli. But...
Broccoli is fine.
But Broccoli better be fine. Broccoli. Unexpected hero?
Broccoli or Drake?
Broccoli.
People who are... so I will be honest. I am a cat person. That is my mug. It is a cat mug. It says cat person. I love cats. I'm going to be honest with you. When everyone was like, what happened to Broccoli? I had never heard of that man. I had no idea who they were talking about for so long.
Really?
I had no clue.
The cat. I had just been introduced to... I had just read about him.
That's fair.
So. If you don't remember who Broccoli is a cat.
Yes.
The cat that they get from... I can't remember how to say it. The Xenol's island.
The island of luck.
Zahelna, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just get an
it's Xenol.
cat. Xenol, thank you. They get a cat.
Yeah, that
Drake
was one
gets
of
a cat.
The claw.
Yeah. The claw, and it's a kitten. So cute.
They named Broccoli, which I don't think they explain. It's just Broccoli.
He just literally was like... something about no one, it's good for you, but no one wants it.
I do really like Drake.
I do too.
It's funny. I think him and Riddick could be besties.
They definitely
I think they have similar... I think Drake is maybe what Riddick is going to turn into.
I think so too.
I think he's a little bit more grounded than Riddick is right now.
Yes.
But yes.
Oh, we forgot to mention Riddick, my man. You can freeze things.
Oh yeah.
like living things.
He froze a...
I haven't gotten there yet, but he freezes a vent. You told me.
He freezes a wyvern in half, and it literally... I thought it was in Rhiannon's perspective.
I was listening to it at 1.5 speed, so I might have missed it.
Okay, so it's in Rhiannon's perspective, because she looks over, and she's like, what is he doing? And Fearg's like, you have to stay focused. But he's essentially just, like, leaning across and touches it. Freezes it, and she looks down, and she goes, holy crap, it cracked in half. So it froze literally like a big icicle. Oh, I also have a different theory about something else, but I don't know if you've gotten fully to the end. You've probably gotten to the end of the battle yet. Dang it.
I have not. For later.
I have a thought on a way that they could maybe protect themselves from being drained in battles. But the wyvern cracks in half.
Is it freezing a wyvern and standing on him?
Kind of. But in a different way.
Okay.
It's not really
okay to say it.
So it's not necessarily a spoiler, but Theophany mentions that the only way to not be drained is to stand on something that's already
been altered.
Why can't they make wyvern shoes?
That's a great idea.
Like take the skin of the wyvern, similar to moccasins, and make them into a shoe.
That's a great idea.
Where they're constantly standing on something.
Yes.
That has had the magic already taken out of it.
Correct. Incredible.
I don't think that's probably what's going to happen.
They should.
The moment that she said that, I was like, moccasins. Mm-hmm. I'm also from an area that is heavily Native American, so I think that's why that was my first thought process.
That's fair.
But
that's incredible.
Immediately, I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, like, even if it's just, like, you put the bones of them inside of, like, just as a boning, like, something.
Yeah.
Like, have it in their boots, in their soles of their shoes, where...
Make the shoe, and then make the sole.
They have so many...
Insert.
Wyvern carcasses that they can handle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is genius. One last question about Riddick.
Mm-hmm.
Signets develop from what you need.
Yep.
What could he need that his signet is ice?
To chill?
Wait, really?
I don't know. That's my thought. It's like maybe just some semblance of chill. I don't know. I think maybe coldness. Like he's not cold at all. He's incredibly warm. And so, like, maybe, like, almost, like, that coldness to be able to have a distance. Because he loves so fiercely and strongly and, like, immediately. Like, he chose them immediately.
He did.
So I don't know if maybe it's that, like, coldness that he doesn't have to kind of balance him. I think of him as almost more of, like, a balance than something that he needed, which
Okay.
is something he needs.
It
but
is, yeah.
like a balance of.
Okay, I love that because I truly was like, wait,
No,
I
don't either, but I think that's the best that I have for it.
love it.
Yeah.
I think that he needed to be able to freeze things. I think that in his soul, he was like, I need to have something that's so badass.
Ice building.
Ah.
Which Liam also can do. That was his second segment. That was not a typo. That was not an editing mistake. That was correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's time to wrap this up.
Yes.
Onyx Storm is amazing.
We clearly love it. We talked for hours on
For
end
hours
about it.
on end. So some of the exciting news that we had that I alluded to in some of our posts.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to start trying to record, like, actually location-wise, like, at places.
Yeah.
Throughout St. Louis.
We've already done steampunk, but
We've
yes.
done steampunk.
Yeah.
That one is kind of like a home base, for me at least. So, because my husband used to work there, so.
Yes.
But yeah, we're gonna see if we can get in with like bookstores and stuff.
Yeah.
If you are watching or listening and you have a fun idea for location shooting,
Around St. Louis area.
yeah, let us know.
Please, we would love to.
Leave it in the comments.
Comment.
And I think with that, we should sign off.
Yes.
All right, bye.
Bye, y'all.